Okay, let me call the Board of Finance meeting for this evening to order. It's after 7 and it looks like there's a crowd seated here ready to go. And there's a lot that I think we want to discuss this evening, so I'm hoping that we can have plenty of time for discussion this evening. Let me first explain and give some history to explain to the members of the public who are here why we're here this evening. After the last budget defeat, which I believe was on September 3rd, the members of the Board of Finance and the other members of the boards believed that the best thing to do for the next step before we proposed another budget was to have a comprehensive meeting of the three boards and with townspeople so that we could get some input from the residents as to why the budgets have been defeated so far and as to what changes would be recommended. So that's why we're here this evening. Let me then give you a little bit of history as to what has happened to this date, because the Board of Finance has been working on this issue of the budget regularly since March of this year. When the budget was originally presented to us by the various town boards with their requests, we had a request from the Board of Selectmen for $10,549,000, which would be an increase of $1,306,000 over the current year's spending. The Board of Education of $28,165,000 with an increase of $1,233,000 over this year's spending. The library budget was a request for $530,000, which was $15,000 over last year's spending. In our first round of cuts, we spent probably 2 months reviewing all budgets very carefully, going through line items, determining what we needed to be done, what we felt shouldn't be done. And we therefore, following that, we cut the Board of Selectmen budget by $4,000 to $10,000, and we cut the Board of Education budget by $800,000, which resulted in a Selectmen budget which was $896,000 over current spending, a Board of Education budget that was $433,000 over current spending, a library budget that was $15,000 over current spending. We went to referendum with a $1 million increase, and that was defeated by the voters at a referendum in May. We then made an additional $120,000 in cuts to the Board of Education, $60,000 Board of Selectmen, $3,000 library, and that was defeated at a second referendum in June. We then made cuts for a third referendum. We cut an additional $313,000 from the Board of Education, $237,000 from the Board of Selectmen, and $29,000 for the library, and produced a budget which had no tax increase in it, and that was defeated at a referendum in June. Following that, we made additional cuts of $22,000 from the Board of Education budget, and that's what was presented to voters at the referendum in September. So the budget that we now have before us indicates a increase in the Board of Selectmen budget of $599,000, say $600,000, a decrease in the Board of Education budget of $22,000, a decrease in the library budget of $16,000. So the budget that we presented at the September 3rd referendum and is now before you, this involved a total of $1,984,000 in cuts that was made by the Board of Finance, almost $2 million in cuts that we made from original requests. It provided for a tax increase, provided for no tax increase, but taxes would be the same as they were last year. It provided for a decrease in the Board of Education budget and a decrease in the library budget. It provided for a $600,000 increase in the Board of Selectmen budget, and that was for reasons that we very carefully considered over the 3 or 4 months we worked at this. And I think Richard may explain some of this later, but it included an additional $100,000 for paving because it was demonstrated to us that the roads had not been properly taken care of, an additional $150,000 for building updates to the town buildings because there's a whole history of deferred maintenance for town buildings that need to be dealt with, and $100,000 for evaluation, which we're required to do by state statute. So the money that's in the Selectmen's budget is for things that we felt were very important, had to be done. The 2 main issues that we dealt with during the budget process with the Board of Education budget, the Board of Finance was very concerned about the fact that there had been a substantial decrease in the student population in the Stafford school system over the last several years, and there didn't seem to be a decrease in the budget because of that. So we therefore pretty much enforced on the Board of Ed the message that we wanted to see a decrease, And we think the Board of Ed responded very well. They eliminated 9 teaching positions in order to get to a budget that's substantially lower than what they had originally asked for. With respect to the selectmen budget, it was demonstrated to us that there were several examples of deferred maintenance that we felt we had to be dealt with, and so we approved the increase in the selectmen budget. Let me say that this budget was a result of many, many hours of hard work by the members of the Board of Finance to sit up with you. We've had several late night meetings. Many of the members did a lot of research into the various town budgets to get information. We disagreed with each other, we argued with each other, and sometimes we raised our voices to each other. But in the end, we came down with a compromise that we felt was best reflected the interest, the future of the town, and the needs of the town, and the town's ability to pay for it. Let me just say that I think we have to keep in mind, and this is my feeling as to where we stand here tonight, is the budget is more than just a bunch of numbers. It's a statement of what the town wants to do. It's a statement of the town's plan for the future. It's a statement of the goals that we want to set. It's a statement of what we want to accomplish. And I think we have to, I like to look at it as such, and the board likes to look at it as such. And the failure to get approval of the town budget indicates that there's not support by the people in town as to what the town wants to do. And it's not a good thing. And it doesn't look good to people in other towns. It doesn't look good to investors who might want to loan money to the town. And it doesn't look good to businesses that want to set up their business in town. So it's important that we come to some sort of consensus between everyone as to what we want to see the town done and the direction we want to see the town to go. Now, I know there's been objections, and we've heard this during the budget process, to certain things that the selectmen or other town officials have done. And we don't always agree on everything. I don't agree with everything the first selectman has done, and I don't agree with everything other town officials have done. However, the budget process is not the proper place to air those grievances. The budget process is the place to try to make decisions about the long-term future of the town. Because after all, a decision that we make in terms of budget doesn't just affect the current administration, it affects the people that are going to come after them and that are going to run the town 2 or 3 years down the road. So I'm hoping that as we discuss this evening, we can think in terms of long-term good of the town and not in terms of just what's bothering us this year or this evening. I know it's been stated many times that we should make an attempt to get more business into town and to increase the tax base in town. And that's a very good thing, and we all agree with that. In fact, this is happening. There are several businesses which have plans to set up new operations in the Stafford, West Stafford Road corridor, and a lot of that stuff can't be disclosed. However, if you want to see what's going on, you just got to drive by the old co-op building to see what kind of money is being put to establish a new commercial building at that location. But any business that wants to come to town is not going to come to a town unless it believes that there is a community that wants to work to make the town a better place. And when you don't approve your budget, when you don't approve other things, they get a very negative attitude. It's been mentioned to us that we should cut the police force, not have supervisory personnel in the police force. And I can tell you right now, no business will come to a town that doesn't have adequate police protection and doesn't have a properly organized police force. So in terms of what we want to do business, if you want to get business in town, you can't keep cutting those things. Now there are various plans in place to extend the sewer line up to Johnson Hospital so we can maintain a first-class healthcare facility in town. There are plans in place to bring water lines out to the Big White Plaza so we can have restaurants and other new businesses out there. And there's plans in place to bring a gas line extension so that there will be natural gas in the street in the downtown, this town, in the business corridor. And that is because many businesses, many people living in the town have told us they want this. Now, these are all things that we have to get together behind because they will make this town go forward in the future. Now, I've already heard grumbling about this. The people who are voting no on these budgets have grumbled about the fact that they may have to pay for something on this stuff. Let me tell you right now, if we do not, there will be proposals coming before you within the next year for bonding to pay for some of these things. If those proposals are defeated, this town will be going nowhere, and no one's going to want to come here. Let me tell you a little story about another place that I have familiarity with. My daughter lives in Greenville, South Carolina, which of course is a much larger city than Stafford. It's a different focus. About 30 years ago, Greenville was a depressed mill town with boarded up shops all on the main street in downtown, with factories that were closed and locked up and vacant. What they did in Greenville was they tore down the factories, developed a green space, green corridor right to the center of the town. They built a theater, which now has a symphony orchestra and Broadway shows come and play in that theater. And they developed an arts corridor in which there's a brand new library, a brand new theater, in which local groups can perform, and a local museum. Since they've done that, BMW has set up its American headquarters in Greenville. Michelin has set up its American headquarters in Greenville, and several other not so well-known corporations have set up there. And let me tell you, businesses don't want to come to some place just because it's cheap or just because the tax is low. They want to come to a community that shows vision, that shows an interest in its future, and has the kind of amenities that will make the place that their employees and their officials want to live. So I hope that in terms of discussions on the budget this evening and throughout the coming year, we will keep all those factors in mind. Now, I know that the First Selectman, Richard Shook, was going to make a presentation, and then we have the Board of Education here to explain where they stand on the budget right now. I don't know which one he wants to go first.
First of all, I want to thank everybody that showed up tonight. I've seen a lot of faces and a lot of people that I've never seen at a meeting. This is actually kind of exciting that people are taking interest in, and they're coming out. You know, my presentation tonight is really based on can you hear me? My presentation tonight is really more based on the financial outlook for Stafford. It's a bird's eye view and a snapshot of Stafford and comparing to other towns or similar towns close to us. I feel it's important, if we're planning for our future, we need to know where we've been, we need to know how we compare to other towns. So my presentation is more of an informational, you know, kind of a financial overview. Technology, wonderful thing. It's great when it works. Okay, first slide. The following slides compare Stafford to other towns in our area. The information shown is from fiscal years ending 2008 to 2012. These years were chosen because the data has been verified through independent auditors and submitted to the state as official record. What I took all this data out of was the municipal financial or fiscal indicators from the Office of Policy Management. They do all 169 towns and put all the data in comparatively. I know many of you will have questions in the next few slides. If you could save them for the end, the picture will become clear. On the Stafford revenue. For most towns in Connecticut, the single largest expenditure is education. Our surrounding towns spend a similar % on education. This graph shows the reduction of state and federal aid received by towns since 2008. What I did was I used Holland, Ellington, Stafford, Summers, Coventry, Wilmington, and Ashford. Wilmington and Ashford, much smaller towns, much smaller budgets, but right next door. And I hear, people in public all the time, well, Wilmington is cheaper on this, or Ashford is cheaper on this. So I wanted to bring them in. And what it is I want to show everybody is the same. Regardless if your budget is $5 million or if your budget's $15 million, you'll see the trends are all the same throughout all these times. State and federal aid to towns includes funds for education and town programs. While it may not seem to be significant, the average reduction for towns compared is 39%. The following slide will show the exact reduction for each town. In that time frame, Stafford lost $6,400,000 in state and federal aid, which is equivalent to 31.6%. You can see Towns lost 7.5, Ellington lost 7.2, Coventry lost 5.3, Wellington lost 1.8, and then Ashford lost 1.6. And as you can see on that chart, every town gets the same curve. All Connecticut towns have been struggling with decrease in the amount of state and federal aid being provided to towns. Towns have coped with this reduction in funding in different ways, such as the following: reduction in spending, increase in the mill rate, growth in the grant list, which means commercial and residential development, or a combination of all the strategies. Okay, this is a chart that shows the net grant list growth. The net grant list is a figure that's put out by our assessor, which was published by the Office of Policy Management, which means we have a set grant list of all of our taxable property. The net grant list is the grant list less all of any exemptions that there may be in your grant list. As you can see here, Ashford has a significant jump. Stafford is the gray line on the bottom. You can see we're relatively flat. The next slide will show actual numbers. I'll go down the percentages. It's easier. All the numbers are up there. Towns grew 6.26%. Ellington, 4.77%. Stafford, 1.76%. Summers, 9.38%. Coventry, 13.35%. In Wilmington, 17.21%. And Ashford was 29.07%. There's a lot of factors that go into figuring the grant list. It's made up of personal property, it's made up of real estate, it's made up of reevaluation of your properties. Whenever we have reevaluation, your property values go up and go down depending on what the sales are in that time period. But if you looked at the number, Stafford's grant list grew $13 million, $13.9 million. Ashford's grew $99.9 million, a town of 4,000 people. Coventry's very similar to Stafford, very similar town, grew $129 million. The mill rate. Okay, this chart shows a comparison of mill rate in Stafford to other towns. The mill rate and the grand list are directly tied together. As property values change, the grand list grows due to development, the mill rate changes. Actually, as you can see here, the town of Ashford, this spike on the left-hand side, that was the town of Ashford's mill rate in 2008 was 34. Things changed. They're down somewhere around 25 now. When I was selling real estate in 2002, 2003, town of Holland, their mill rate was 33 plus. And why I'm talking about the mill rate is people focus on the mill rate as a number and only a number, and when they try to compare it to other towns and say another town's mill rate is less, well, another town's mill rate may be less, it's because it's directly tied to the grand list. Since 2008, Stafford has lost $6.4 million in state and federal aid to the town. The fact is, the grand list of Stafford has only increased $13.9 million, or 1.8%. And Stafford taxpayers pay 58.7% of the town expenditures. Okay, general government expenditures, operating expenditures. Once again, I took all the same towns. You can see everybody around us for that time period, they're pretty flat. We've got Ellington and Tolland that have some spikes up and down. But the change from 2008 to 2012 for Tolland was 1.6 million increase. Now this is the audited operating expenditures. Ellington is up 357,000. Stafford's audited operating expenditures is down 171,000 in that time frame. Summers is up 533,000. Wellington is down 19,000. And Ashford is down 641,000. The reason for the big jump in Ashford in their reduction was in 2007 they had a project that they had done. There was money left over. They rolled it into their budget that year, so it spiked and showed that they spent a lot of money in their budget that year. That's why there was a reduction of 640,000. But Ashford in general was pretty flat. Okay. As shown in the graph, spending in Stafford has decreased from 2008, and I want to clarify. The slide says spending has decreased since 2008. It's difficult when taxes are going up. The word spending in there is the wrong word, because when you look at the expenditure side of the budget and you look at the right side of what you're spending, different programs, different grants come in, you spend more money on that side. When you take into consideration the money coming in on the left side, which is your revenues. So the spending may be a little misleading. I'm not trying to say we're spending less money, but our operating budget, our physical operating budget is less. We are spending more money. You know, I run in the Ambulance Association. It shows on the right side as an expenditure, and it shows that we raised the spending. But on the left side of the budget, when you get the revenues, it wipes it out. You know, that's how we were able to get to a zero this year. Yes, it's $500,000 in an increase from last year's spending, but revenues on the other side wash that out so that you end up with a zero. Educational spending. This first slide, it shows the student enrollment in the Stafford schools has been decreasing over the past few years, and this trend is expected to continue in the near future. The next slide. The data indicates that there is a direct correlation between town's educational expenditures and its receipt of state and federal aid. Okay, on this slide here, this is using all the same towns that we've used, and naturally you can see on the bottom, Wellington and Ashford, they're pretty flat. But Wellington and Ashford also don't have a high school. They send their children out to another town. That's one of the expenditures we have that they don't. But you'll see all the towns above, you can see the trend. You know, there was a big dip, and then the funding starts coming back up. And the slide on the right, which is Stafford isolated by itself, you know, I wanted to show that this is, you know, this is not just Stafford, it's every town. The funding comes in, goes away. When it goes away, the spending's going down, and then it comes back up. Summary. Consumer Price Index, rate of inflation from 2008 to 2012 was 6.6%. The overall reduction in spending by town officials demonstrates fiscal responsibility as they're providing for the same level and in some cases, increases in services. Okay, Stafford had lost $6.4 million in state and federal aid. The net grand list grew 1.76% total, which is less than the CPI. The Board of Education reduced its spending when both state and federal aid to the town was reduced. And general government operation expenditures have decreased over that time period of $171,000. Moving forward, the town goals is to pass the budget and move forward with future projects to improve our town. Ongoing and future projects. Number one is the utility expansion project, and that's a project to bring natural gas out of Enfield into Stafford, down the 190 corridor through Main Street, pick up American Woman, pick up 3M, also run it out to Munson Road to TTM Technologies and to TTM in Staffordville. The goal is to pick up the major consumers of fossil fuel and get them off of oil onto natural gas. The data shows that 2 years ago, the consumption of their natural gas and their propane and their oil, if they had been on natural gas, it would have saved $3 million in operating costs. That includes town buildings also. If we can get these utilities in, that enhances the town to get people the utilities they want when they're developing, and we can also enhance the businesses. They're going to hire more people, they're going to expand. The next projects are the solar, photovoltaic, and thermal projects. We've done solar hot water projects in one of the schools, and we've also done solar electric projects, I believe, all of the schools. The next project that we're looking at is geothermal heating and cooling projects. Now, back to the solar photovoltaic. We're looking at putting solar panels. There's a project that we're looking at putting solar panels behind the middle school and on top of the transfer station. Approximately 3 megawatts. I think it's 2.8 or 2.9 megawatts is what we're looking at. That project there will virtually wipe out the electric bill for the town of Stafford. And the way that project is funded is that project, we're already paying the electric bill. And we can take, through virtual net metering, which was legislation that just passed, we can run all the electricity we generate through one meter that spins backwards. Then we get credit in other buildings for that electricity that we generated. We can do that as a municipality. Agriculture can do it. I believe businesses can do it on a limited basis, but we also have what's called ZRECs that we get, zero carbon emission credits. Northeast Utilities is mandated to have a program that entices people to get off of conventional fossil fuels and other programs. So what we've done, and the Energy Committee has been very thorough at this. They work really hard at finding every single dime that they can get and applying for these ZRECs from Northeast Utilities. Every one of us in the room pays for these ZRECs in our electric bill because Northeast Utilities is mandated to pay so much out to get people off of the electric. So these projects actually are cash flow positive because we save in our electric bill, then we get the ZRECs paid to us for every megawatt we generate of electricity from Northeast Utilities. They've done a wonderful job, putting these programs together. These will come a little later, more detailed with some more public information meetings. If anybody does have questions tonight, Butch Clark's here, town engineer's here, we can answer a little more in-depth questions on that. The geothermal heating and cooling projects, we're looking at doing 3 schools and this building here with geothermal, which will take care of all of the heating and air conditioning. If you asked me 5 years ago about it, I would say absolutely not. Geothermal doesn't work. the technology caught up. The systems we're looking at are being used in Anchorage, Alaska. You know, they're really amazing systems. We toured Holland once already. We're getting ready to go back and tour Holland again. They're converting their buildings. The best thing about it is we won't have an oil bill. And the electricity to run the geothermal system, we're generating ourselves from our solar panels. Next one. Next one is going to be our rail expansion, or expansion project. It's actually a passenger rail service. Since 2009, or no, sorry, 2011, Stafford has been a signatory with 18 other towns from New London to Vermont for passenger rail service, advocating getting passenger rail service back on this rail system we have going through town. The good news is we just received the Tiger Grant, or the state of Connecticut received the Tiger Grant from the federal government for $12 million to upgrade and repair our rails. This system will tie Amherst, Yukon, the Coast Guard Academy, New London, you know, all the way up to Vermont, all the way to Canada. We're one of the original signatories and towns to support this, and I would hope that we're going to be a siting for passenger rail service. It would liven up our downtown. It would raise real estate prices and values downtown. It would give people the opportunity to work at Amherst or Yukon or someplace else and take a train to go to work. It would give the opportunity for students to commute back and forth from, you know, housing here, or commute back and forth from different universities. A lot of possibilities. I think these, you know, I've already gone through these, so I think we can skip those slides. And the last one is that I hope the picture is now clear. We have reviewed where the town has been and where the town is going in the future. Does anybody have any questions?
Could you give us an example when you had the net grand list value chart?
Yeah.
And Stafford had a very small increase, the worst of any because of that. But give us an example of what made the big increase in some of the other towns. What kind of thing did they do that we didn't do?
Some of it is actual reevaluation. Some of it, and this is where we're digging deeper into here. And we've identified a problem. Our grand list isn't growing. Now we have to identify how to fix it. Some of it was development. In the report from OPM is like 265 pages. It has so much information. We can pull out the building permit reports, so we can look at commercial development, we can look at building development. I honestly, to pull this data out, haven't had the time to dig deeper into it, but there's a lot that goes into it. It could be, you know, people buying the vehicles. They had a little bit of commercial development, a little bit of residential. It could be their reevaluation, the real estate prices and values were up at that time. All of these towns all did reevaluations in that same time period. So you're gonna have fluctuations, but it goes to show, you know, Ashford and Coventry really had some spikes.
I thought you were going to be able to tell us particular.
Yeah, I don't have particulars. You know, I've identified a trend and a problem. And like I said, this is kind of a bird's eye view. It's kind of looking from, you know, an airplane, looking at all these towns and, you know, how do we compare? Where are we running next to each other? You know, and I see the grand list not growing, and it concerns me. We had a report done by a planner consultant on our plan of conservation and zoning regulations. You know, and he summed it up in about one paragraph, was that our regulations are sufficient, everything works for us, and it can continue to work for us, but if we don't change, we're only going to guarantee higher taxes.
Rich, I just want to add, there is some, to answer her question a little bit better, there is something that you don't see on the slides, and I'm a little disturbed on the, I don't see it in the plan, and that's called the fire service in this town. If you were to look at those towns that you chained together since 2008, every town has got a new fire station. Every town has got probably 3 new fire trucks, and every one of those towns except Stafford went to paid people. So that's where the tax increase was. And that's how you bring business in, because it's not just police protection that the businesses want, it's good fire service. And when you have a volunteer staff that's only available at 6 at night till 12, because you're depending on retirees from 6 in the morning to 5, and you get 6 guys, you're not gonna say we're burning business. And that's why the increases are in those towns.
Great. More questions? Okay.
I just have a question. I don't know anything about this, but
Yeah.
can you tell me why Vernon, Vernon has a lot of federal state aid coming into their schools? I mean, they got tons of money that came in, and how come, you know, we don't have it, we don't have it?
It's an education financing budget. I can't answer that. I'm not sure if the superintendent or the board is prepared to answer compared to a
I mean,
specific
they go
town.
by how your school is doing, and
Right.
Vernon is one of the poor towns, so they get a lot of money. We're not a rich town.
Right, and I myself am not prepared to answer that, but I don't, superintendent?
I would say that yes, one of the reasons that Stafford Public Schools, the town of Stafford qualifies for so many grants is because we have a high percentage of students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and yes, we are. We were actually talking about that during an interview today. But we are fortunate to be recipients of large amounts of grants. Technology grant, for instance, that Mr. Bednar's, our curriculum director, submitted last year on our behalf. The state awarded our district, our town, over $500,000, which helped, which allowed us to improve the infrastructure of our schools so that students could take the smarter balance assessments, which is the new, instead of CMT and CAPT, that's the direction we had to go in. Our neighbor next door only got $28,000 for that grant. So that is, we are definitely recipients of grants. We also are recipients of Head Starts or readiness grants. Ms. Shelley Michaud over at West Stafford School actually serves as grant manager to support those programs to meet the needs of our youngest pupils in town. And so that's just a couple of examples.
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
I was not going to ask this question, but in the interest of transparency and so forth. I really like this meeting. I want to congratulate all 3 boards for coming together. The presentation so far.
Can't hear you.
Okay. The president, you want me to come forward?
Please.
Why don't you do that, Dave?
Thank you.
I want to say again, I endorse tonight's meeting. I want to thank each of the 3 boards for being here and arranging this. The information is excellent, and I think if we interpret what's being said correctly, there is a future orientation here tonight that we badly needed. But there's 2 things that grate at me, and I think if I have these issues, other people probably do too. I'm all done running as a candidate. I'm too old to care what people think, so I'm going to ask my 2 questions. The first one is, if you had the data that you're presenting here tonight in January, and you knew that Warren Mills was in the process of shutting down, and at the time we didn't know that the mill was going to reopen, if we knew about the cuts in federal and state aid and so forth, and then the budget went down 4 times in votes, why did you continue to hire anyone new for the town of Stafford? I have no problem with who you hired. That's not the issue. We need the people, yes, but just like at home, sometimes you can't afford what you can't afford. You want something, you need something, but you don't have the money. I want to know why, in the face of all those budget defeats, you continue to make part-time jobs, full-time jobs, and to hire new people.
Amen.
Well, first of all, Mr. Walsh, I did not have this data. The data wasn't put out till March, so I didn't have it in January. I started looking deep at this data when we were having budget problems. You know, the people who are hired, I have replaced positions because people leave. I replace them with lower salaried employees. Can you tell me exactly which positions you're concerned about?
I think, again, I think the appointments themselves have been very good. What I'm concerned about, especially is appearances. The budget goes down, the position that you held as a planning and zoning enforcement officer was part-time. You made it full-time with benefits and so forth. And you did that at a time when the current budget wasn't passing. It may have been badly needed, it may have been a good hire, but it doesn't look good to people who take their time to vote. It looks like disrespect. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people here. We're not angry at anybody, but to us it looks like disrespect. And I think you should
Well,
answer that.
with all due respect, I did that job for 3 years. I lobbied for that position to be full-time. The town of Stafford doesn't have a full-time staff planner. We've got a town engineer, who's also our building official, who's doing the work of 3 people. That department needs help. Do we want our community to continue to flounder like it has been, or do we want the professional help and staff to move things forward? That's the reason for that expansion. Because if we can't service people coming to look to invest into our community, or we're putting them off, or we don't have time to meet with them, how does it make us look if we can't give them answers? Professional staff.
The second issue is an even bigger one, and I would ask everybody to think about this now, tonight, tomorrow, because we're going to have these same problems over and over again. The biggest problem here in Stafford is that there is nothing like a business plan for the town. There's nothing like a curriculum development program for the schools. We shoot from the hip. There has been an advisory committee on government reorganization meeting 3 years. Where are they? They've issued a few skeletal reports. They have a large number of canceled meetings. They meet at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, for example, and nobody can even be there. The town has never given us a plan. This is what we're going to do, A, B, C, D. We all agree we need to increase the grand list. Everybody's in favor of that, and I know you are too. I'm not attacking you personally. Also, everybody wants to have a lower cost of living for all of us in Stafford because people are hurting here. They're suffering. A lot of people are on fixed income. There are a lot of people with large families. My son has 4 kids in the family. He makes a good income. They're still struggling to get by. And if anybody thinks they're not, they're kidding themselves. We also look around at other towns and we see the services they have compared to what we have. Fire is a case in point. You're absolutely right. Those agencies have been underfunded, not just this administration, but for a decade or so. But the bottom line is, you know why we're here tonight, and you know why this good presentation is being made? Because we voted the budget down 4 times. I didn't, I voted for it, but the majority of people did. And that's why we're getting the response that we're getting. So I think instead of blaming us or inferring that, well, the people are wrong, they're rumor mongers, they don't understand the plan, that's not the point. The point is they never gave us a plan. And the plan has to come from the government, it has to be approved by the people. Then you have faith that the money that's being spent is being spent wisely. That's the only point I want everyone here to get. If you have a plan, you can show how the expenditure of dollars is advancing you toward that goal, good. I think the town is, most people in this town want us all to succeed. But if you're doing it in secret, incomplete, dragging things on for years, all right, you're creating a condition where people can begin to say, hey, we're being disrespected. These people don't take us seriously. And that's why I'm glad we're having the meeting tonight. But I would like you to, give us some timetable. When is this ever going to be over, this advisory reorganization committee? When is the plan coming forward that they're going to develop?
Thank you.
I have a member of that committee sitting over there. The plan has been completed. They're finalizing, formatting, putting it together to give the Board of Selectmen a formal presentation on the plan. It's a recommendation at that point, statutorily. If we change anything in the form of government, we have to create an ordinance, establishing a charter committee, and then the charter committee will take over and draft the charter. I come here tonight to be positive, to show good things that are going on. I never once stood here and put the blame on anybody here.
You never had a big enough crowd.
But I didn't stand here and put the blame, but there's a reference that I'm sitting here blaming the public. I'm not blaming the public. What I'm trying to do is inform the public of where we are. You know, decisions are made. Not everybody's going to agree with every decision. I hear it about employees. You know, since I took office, my employee hiring practice is a hiring committee. It's not applications come to my office and I singly as a first selectman decide this is my buddy, I'm hiring. And I'm not inferring that other people did it. But nobody can accuse me of doing it because I isolated myself from that process. The best applicants and the best people get the jobs. I've been criticized for hiring somebody who didn't live in Stafford. He was by far the best applicant for the job. You know, there's a lot that we do that some people think it's done in private or it's done in secrecy, and it's not. You know, my administration, since I took office, has all the minutes of boards and commissions on the website. I have all the historical budget data on the website. People talk transparency. I'm not trying to hide anything. If I was trying to hide something, that information wouldn't be there for anybody in the public to go pull down and read. I ask people to come to meetings. Not everybody can make it to every meeting. But we certainly, none of us on the Board of Selectmen and any of the boards and commissions is trying to do anything behind closed doors in secret. Real quick, one thing that we're working on for this transparency, because it's an issue that every town has where people feel that they don't get enough information. I mean, I go to meetings with other first selectmen and mayors and different people, and everybody, it keeps coming up transparency. What we've decided to do is we're moving forward, we're trying to do a monthly newsletter that will be mailed to every house in the town. You know, and I'll be honest, everything we do, everything that the government does costs money. And that's why we have taxes. But to do this program, and I'm working on the final numbers and putting the business model together, and we feel that we can do it without burdening the taxpayers. But you're looking, to do a monthly newsletter and mail it out to every household is $80,000 a year. That's a lot of money. You know, we have to pay bills just as everybody else pays bills. But we've got a plan, we think that we can do it, and be able to do it without burdening the taxpayers.
My name is Catherine Bradshaw. I've lived in this town for almost 34 years. I have not seen a lot of commercial industry that has come into this town. I've seen bits and pieces come and go, and I feel sorry for all of you people who do not get out there and voice your opinion and vote. Shame on all of you, because if you took the time and effort to vote, things would go through without so many problems that people are causing for nothing. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we have the chairman of the Board of Ed to present the budget where we stand from the Board of Education's point of view.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you to the Board of Finance. And most importantly, thank you to everybody out there tonight. This is a really great opportunity for us to give you more information, because what's important is that you understand the decision that you're making when you go out to vote. And like that woman just said, it is very important that we get as many people as we can out to vote. So the more people that understand why you're going out to vote, what it's about, what the numbers are, and where they come from, the more likely we are to get a larger voter turnout, which is what's needed at this time. At the Board of Finance meeting after our last referendum, there were some community members there that spoke some wonderful words of wisdom. They gave us some insight into what their thoughts were, And one of the important pieces was another opportunity to speak and to be heard. And that was the reason for putting together this meeting tonight. And I thank the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, my fellow board members, for all coming together tonight. And I hope that when each of you leaves tonight, you have a better understanding of where we stand, what the process is like, and if you have something that you'd like to say, that you take the time to do that and know that you will be heard. I'm going to hand the microphone over to the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Pat Collin, and we have some information. It was on a piece of paper at the back of the room on the table with the red and white check tablecloth. If you did not get one, it does look like there are still some more, but if you did, that will be what she's working off of. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I guess the handout in the back, it is one-sided. We prepared, trying to summarize where we are. Some of the feedback that we did provide, first of all, we were complimented this year because we were transparent, and that I know was a concern or criticism a few years back. But then we also received feedback that some of the, because we were so transparent, that some people didn't really know what to do, how to process all that information that we gave. So our commitment to you this upcoming budget season is that we're going to talk through and try to make a presentation so that we give you the information that you need in a way that you can understand that. I would say that if you did not get one of these, it will be posted on our website tomorrow, so feel free to access the information there. In terms of highlighting the information that we are presenting, last year the Board of Education had a budget of nearly $27 million. The current budget, as you know, Chairman Musk already made this announcement, we're actually under 0.08% under last year's budget. So we have $22,606 less this year. The figure, of course, captures a lot of reductions. When we started the process, and it's not something that I create or the board chair comes up with at night. It really is a time-consuming process. As a matter of fact, today we're talking about, we've got about 2 weeks, and we really have to start those discussions about what we need to continue to provide appropriate education for all of our students within the next, as I said, 2 weeks. This amount of money needs to support a student enrollment, this is a preliminary count as of last week, of 1,590 students. In addition, and I don't know that everyone knows this, in addition to providing transportation and/or tuition for an additional 189 students who attend either magnet schools, vocational technical schools, vocational agricultural schools, or other schools. It's also important to note that the Board of Education currently has 324 positions as of today. That's down from 333 positions during the 13-14 school year. Some of those positions are in fact part-time, and so those employees are not entitled to benefits. I'm not sure if folks are aware, but the Stafford Board of Education is one of the top 4 largest employers here in Stafford. Over 50% of the employees of the Stafford Board of Education are Stafford residents. And I see a number of you here, so thank you for coming out to support us. What we've also presented here is a comparison of last year's approved budget and this year's proposed budget. One of the things that you'll note in the middle column under expended is that there is an unspent balance from last year of nearly $60,000. That's not because the Board of Ed was not prudent in its budgeting process, but those savings are realized from one, staff working overtime, and not getting paid for overtime, but I mean overtime in terms of energy, effort, creative problem solving to meet the needs of our students, to become more efficient, and then some other more tangible things. For example, if we have a teacher who resigns for the purpose of perhaps taking an administrative position, which happened after July actually this year, we are actually in a position where through our interviewing process, our recruitment and hiring process, we can actually replace that position with a teacher who we don't have to pay at such a rate, because the person may not have a master's or 6th year, but rather be a bachelor's and maybe only 1 or 2 years of experience instead of 8 or 10 years of experience. So that gives you an idea of where some of that comes from.
That $60,000 does not stay with the Board of Education, it goes back to the town for the general fund, so that will assist the town in other ways. I'd like to just conclude with sharing with you that at the bottom of the list was actually identified a number of the positions and the reduction of staff that was eliminated. Well, we've eliminated 9 positions, and sometimes people get confused by this. You'll note that it says a net reduction of 7.2. That's because some of those positions may have been part-time. So of course, if I eliminated, the board, chooses to eliminate 2.5 positions, that's actually 1 full-time equivalent, of 1 full-time person with 2 halves. So again, we're trying to be more mindful in terms of communicating that information to people so that it's not confusing. We are, of course, always open to your feedback. My office has been relocated with the vacating of the Penny building, again, for the purpose of trying to assist in this difficult economic times. I'm actually at 16 Leventhal Run now, which is the portable that used to be over at the Borough School. So once used by the police department for a short time, the school is now occupying that space. So feel free to call. We do have a new number, 684, that was about repeated for you, 684-2208. If you have something that you'd like to discuss with me as superintendent of schools, I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Collins. All right, the main purpose of the meeting this evening was to attempt to get input from everyone here as to what you think we should be doing or what questions or issues you have on the budget process. So the floor is open at this point for comments or questions on members of the public. You want to make a comment, make a comment. If you think you can yell loud enough, do it from there, otherwise come over here. And if you have a question for the Board of Finance, I'll try to answer it. For the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Shook will answer it. And for the school system, the school people answer it. So the floor is open for comments or questions. Yes?
I do have a question about the last budget. We do receive the emails announcing when there was going to be the vote, the referendum. And it did state exactly the amount of the referendum. But how am I to know how that compares to the previous budget amount without going back and trying to find if I printed the paperwork to know what the previous referendum was? And what is the mill rate associated with this new budget vote? It was like, I was grappling, I couldn't find it on the website anywhere where the figures were, so I could make an intelligent decision about how it compared with all the previous votes, or the previous referendum. It was an information. I'm not saying that, to me, sometimes I thought it isn't transparent. They're trying to not tell me everything, and I didn't know where to go to find it without going to the town hall. And and frankly, I don't have time to do all that.
Sure, I understand. I don't do the website, so I don't know what information goes on there, but I don't know if Richard or someone answer that. I mean, during the process, we publish in the newspaper all of the amounts of the budgets, and we, in our minutes of our meetings, make a projection as to what the mill rate is. There's a publication which is handed out at every public hearing, or in every meeting when the budget is discussed, that explains that. And it has comparisons to last year's budget and to what's happened over the course, what the effect of the tax rate will be. If that doesn't appear on the website, then obviously an attempt should be made to do that. Do you want to answer that, Richard?
Well, the information in that spreadsheet or that breakdown is there, but very good point. I will take it into consideration and look at providing a little more information as how it compares.
Yeah. More readily available to us, because as working, many of us don't have the time to attend all your meetings, or
Right.
I needed it to be readily available so I could make a decision.
Yeah, on the homepage, there's a link there that says budget information. You
Yeah,
click on that link, and then it's broken down by year. And then when you go in there, it's broken down by each document inside there, and the document that we publish
Yeah.
showing it.
I did see that, but it didn't have any total. I saw all the subtotals, all the different departments.
Yep.
And then at the very bottom of the spreadsheet, there was no grand total, so I could compare it to what the total, the email for the last referendum
I'll
had
check
a
the,
grand
I'll check the
amount.
paper that's there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Goodell.
My name's Earl Goodell. I'm a taxpayer. I'm also a Board of Ed member. One of the things I'd like to point out to all the people that showed up here tonight, and I thank you all for attending, there's a couple of things that I'd like to ask the Board of Selectmen. And Rich, it's not on you, but a couple things that were brought up at the last election and things that I've heard in town, okay? A lot of people are struggling, pay their bills, pay their taxes. We see a town employment agency that's only working 4 days a week that could probably better serve this town if they were working 5. The other thing is the town refuse thing. A lot of people are working 2 jobs so they can pay their town taxes. They feel as though they're not getting anything. And down in the future, 2 or 3 years from now, the programs that you're putting in place are great. But what can we do for the taxpayers of this town in the next 6 or 8 months? I'd like the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to really look at the transfer station and see if we can't keep it open on Sundays. That would make a big difference to a lot of taxpayers. If you could get that out to them, it helps a lot of people that have to work Saturday. Closing that down, I know the problems we've had with the fire there and the damage it was closed down, but it would really be something you could give back to the taxpayer. I don't think it's going to cost that much. And I would urge that to try to get a workforce that works 5 days a week for the money that they're getting. I'd like that looked into.
The 5 days a week, I couldn't agree with you more. I believe everybody should be working a 5-day work week. The town of Stafford had a 5-day work week. Previous selectmen cut it back to a 4-day work week. He also cut back their hours. I've done a lot of looking at salaries, labor. Our town employees, compared to similar jobs in the private sector, hourly rate makes pretty much the same amount of money, maybe a little bit less in some cases. I don't have a problem. I'd like to take it back to 5 days. I take it back to 5 days, that's increased hours. Increased hours means more money. If I took all the town employees and I brought them back to a 5-day work week, it would probably cost about $60,000 to $75,000 in that range. You know, so it's, I can't just say you're going back to a 5-day, 40-hour work week, and they're going to want compensation for it. They're not going to come and work.
Well, that's what I mean.
Right.
Come forward with a project like that and put it out to a public forum and get the vote from the town people. I think a lot of people here are really concerned that they're not getting the services in this town, and I think businesses also look at that and they're not getting the services. You know, the town hall's not open on Fridays. You know, that hurts some people that work 5 days a week.
I'm there almost every Friday. I see people coming up to the door. I greet people outside.
You know, there's a lot of people that don't, they can't get to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I myself now are using USA. I don't even go to the dump. You know, and if I figured it out by a week thing, USA is almost cheaper. It's within dollars and cents not to have to go there.
Correct.
So these are things that I think people in town, it's not all just the public getting the wrong information. The public is frustrated at the tax bills that they're getting for their residential houses without any benefit to them. You know, I hear and I've seen a lot of people complain about the new vehicles in town. Okay? Shiny new vehicles are great things, but a lot of these people are driving around in 20-year-old vehicles and getting to work 5 days a week. That needs to stop. All your managers need to really take a hard look at what they buy for vehicles that are just for transportation.
On the vehicles, you know, and I'll address it again.
You know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to beat anybody up, Board of Finance, but these are things that are frustrating to people.
And this is what I want the people to understand as far as we have a job. And our job is to look out for your money. And your money includes your assets. Vehicles are assets. But also, it's your money. If I have a fleet of vehicles that is falling apart and I'm putting $2,500, $3,000, $5,000 a year in having the downtime on a vehicle just to keep putting Band-Aids on it to keep it on the road, financially, it makes more sense to buy a new vehicle that I don't have to worry about the maintenance for 5 years on. And I buy that vehicle, in most cases, 30% less than what anybody in this room would buy that
Then
vehicle.
I think that kind of information needs to get out.
And it has got out. We've discussed it at several meetings, and it keeps, coming back up.
I won't take up any more of your time. I'm sure there's other people that want to ask questions.
But, to reiterate that, our job is to look out for your long-term best financial interest. And vehicles are an asset. Years ago, you could go to the state auction, you could pick up something decent from the state. The state's not buying anything. If we go to the state auction, we're buying their deferred maintenance, a vehicle that's got almost 200,000 miles on it, that we're gonna put $5,000 or $6,000 into just to make it roadworthy. So we are, it may not appear as people see vehicles, but we are being responsive.
Next. Yes, the gentleman, lady in back there, I'm sorry.
Nancy Dess, I lived in town for 14 years, and I work for a nonprofit. And in the last 5 years, I've taken a 5% pay reduction, and I've had my hours increased 5 hours a week, and my workload increased 20%. So to say that you can't put your town employees back to work 5 days a week, I don't get that. They have pay, these are the hours, you like it, if you don't, there's other jobs to get. A lot of us used to work at companies, those companies don't exist anymore. Manufacturers are gone, these people are being, the state comes out and says our employment's up, a new Walmart, a new Target opened, whatever, and it's $8 an hour. I have a son home with a master's degree who can't get a job over $10 an hour. I think it's ridiculous, but I think the town needs to look at it. We need to get some businesses in this town. We need to get the moratorium and the size out of the way. There are several towns that are little towns like we are that are booming. Colchester, Canton. We need to look at what they've done, get the industrial in and get the businesses in and raise the tax base, and we need to figure out, I think we have a great location. We're close to Worcester, we're close to Sturbridge, we're close to so many things. And we need to do something in this town to make people want to be here. There's nothing in this town. I feel sorry for the businesses because I have to leave this town every weekend to do my grocery shopping because Big Y is not a good store. I'm sorry. They need to stop running this town, and they've shut down too many things. The restaurants in this town can't make it because if you're leaving this town to do your grocery shopping, to do whatever shopping you need to do for your family, you're also going to the restaurants, you're going to whatever else while you're out there. You're not saying, wait a minute, let me drive all the way back just so I can go to dinner at Basil's or whatever. And I love Basil's. I mean, I've been there twice because it doesn't work into my schedule. I have too many things that I have to leave this town and drive 20 miles to do every weekend. And we need to fix that.
Thank you. Mr. Richards?
Can I borrow your soapbox, Ed?
You certainly can. I always share with you, Mark.
Good evening. I'm going to confuse the board by going up to the positive side, which I'm sure is going to be a shock to you. But at any rate, I'm glad to see some of the information that's come out tonight about the projects and the potential solutions to help solve our economic problem. That being the utility lines through the 190 corridor, the energy savings that we are looking forward to. A lot of credit goes to the Stafford Energy Advisory Committee because I know they've done a considerable amount of work on this. And the town has a lot of potential savings. Equally, I want to give credit to some of Rich's staff that are working on the utility corridor. They would get credit much more, much faster if the information came out faster. Rich, you might want to consider making updates on your monthly selectmen's meeting. If nothing else, people can get it off the minutes that are posted. But these are really good definitive solutions that could bring our economic problems to an end with respect to the tax base and the grand list. But it's important for every one of us in here to realize that for these solutions to work, we're looking at a minimum of 2 to 3 years. The solar PVs have to accrue savings. The utility line construction is going to take time. For businesses to come here after these are available, it's going to take time. And we need to understand that and work with it. And by that I mean, during the interim, while we're waiting to try to rebuild our grand list, we need to be budgeting a little more responsibly. You know, you talk about what people are doing and why they vote no. Well, yes, you alluded to one, Ed, they're mad about one position. Well, basically what they look at is when you go through the whole budget and you go through it by line item and separate things out. Fiscally responsible, they see rather generous raises. Some I understand are union contracts, and I understand that. Some are not. They see lucrative employment contracts. They don't much like that, irrespective of names. And as Earl mentioned, they see a slew of brand new vehicles with the town seal on it, while they're trying to patch up some flivver to make it to work. And then they don't understand why the raises are in place, the hiring's in place, the new shiny vehicles are in place, but when they get up to go to work, they take their 20-year-old vehicle and bounce down the road without the seatbelt, they'd be hitting the ceiling because the roads are so bad. And then as the Board of Finance recommends the cuts, which we appreciate the hours you put in, the cuts seem to come from only the areas that directly affect the public. 60,000 from roads, or we're going to take this from, let's say, the fire department, or we're going to take it from somewhere else. Things that have minimal impact on the residents don't get cut. You never see any raises deferred. You don't see delays in certain purchases. All you see is, well, if we have to cut the budget, it's going to lose the recreational program, or we're going to lose the senior center, or we're going to lose something else. When this stuff comes out, while it may appear like it's a leverage on your vote, actually all that's doing, and I'm directing this to the board members, is really making people angry. A lot. And we don't need to have 4 referendums. We need to budget fiscally responsible and have 1 referendum. But you can't just keep taking the existing tax base and pounding it 1 mil, 3/4 of a mil, 1.5 mil every year till we get these solutions to start to work. You're killing the tax base that we have. These people, as Earl mentioned, groceries are going to go up, can't stop that. Gas goes up, can't stop that. There's so many costs that nobody has any control over, that now the one that they do have control over is the town budget. So what are they going to do? Well, we're going to vote no. And if you make the cuts, and we see that 60,000 goes for roads, but we're still going to purchase a brand new SUV for this supervisor, or this person's going to get a 4% raise, well, nobody wants to see anybody denied a raise. Everybody deserves a raise, right?
They're working.
But how many people that are out in the private sector working have gotten no raise? Or like that woman just mentioned, her pay went backwards and her hours went forward. This happens uniformly throughout the state. So if they see their situation going backwards and the town employment situation going forwards, it's not a good situation, and it's going to generate no votes. So that's what we're asking for, and I speak for a lot of people that voted no, that either for whatever reason, don't want to come down, but that's what we look at. I mean, I look at the budget not just as the total amount. I don't look at just the mill rate. I look at how it's allocated and how it's being used and what results we get out of it. And to a lot of that, I'm not too happy. And for me to say otherwise would be wrong. When you see a certain bunch of core items that are almost like a sacred cow, but then everything and anything that affects everybody that lives in this town gets a whack. I'm to the point where if you said, well, that's it, we're not gonna plow the roads till they're 6 inches, I'd say fine. That's the way it is. I'm not gonna change my vote based on a leverage attempt. I'm gonna change it because you're doing it fiscally responsible. Making cuts where it's not gonna hurt the public any more than necessary. And that's where I stand. That's my soapbox speech. And as far as you, Rich, with the equipment, I'll give you a couple of tips. I don't know if you have one, but if you don't, Mr. Zulik should have an equipment replacement program. When you buy a new vehicle, you should already know how far out it's going to be replaced. You should know the length of term you're going to depreciate it over. And sometimes when you get to that point, you have to make changes based on economics. I've done many, many of them. If you would like, I'd be happy to discuss them with you anytime. They work really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to comment on that, or, I think that was directed toward you.
Back to the vehicles. We drive our vehicles into the ground. I mean, we do. We are implementing better policies and tracking. It's hard for me to go to the public and say, I need to replace this vehicle because I'm spending $5,000 a year, or I spent $25,000 on this truck 3 years in a row. When the truck's $160,000, they spent $75,000 in 3 years to replace a turbo or a rear-ended transmission. It's hard to do that without having the proper tracking. The proper tracking wasn't there. I said it before, professionalism. I am trying to raise the bar and bring it up in the town of Stafford. And I'm not saying that the employees and people before me weren't professional. We do not have the staff. People talk about get rid of town employees. Mr. Richard says, don't make cuts that are going to affect anybody. I get rid of any town employees, it's going to affect everybody in this room. I get rid of people from the highway department, it's going to affect the roads, what we can do, how we can plow snow. If I get rid of somebody from the parks department, I mean, we're stretched thin. You know, 2000, well, in the mid-80s, Parks Department had like 8 employees. We've got 5 employees in the Parks Department now, and we have twice as many fields to take care of and all of the schools that we've taken on over the years. Getting rid of employees is only going to hurt people. Here's an example, criticism over to the zoning officer. I've been there, I've done it, I understand. I understand real estate, I understand the marketing, I understand what we need to do to go out to businesses. I called Paul direct in South Windsor. I basically got the cold shoulder and was told, you don't have the population and we're not interested. What I've done is I've asked the zoning officer to compile the economic data and the demographics of not just Stafford, but the surrounding towns. Stafford was a regional hub. There was jobs here, there was shopping here, there was everything here at one time. Everything changed, you know, whether it changed because of society changed, everybody wants to go to the malls out in Manchester, or whatever, how it changed. Things have got to change back. If we want to survive as a community, there's no reason why we can't become a destination hub again. And not just a destination of shopping, but we have the arts that are very active in our community. And any of the successful mill towns has a very successful arts culture within their town. You know, there's multiple layers on top of all of this. And we have to, as the Board of Selectmen, and myself and the board, we have to look at all of these factors. And when we have a budget, you know, people may not necessarily agree spending on a particular item or another item, and they disagree with it. But the Board of Selectmen, we have a duty to look out for all 12,000 people. We only have so much money to spend, and we have to look out for all 12,000 people. And that might mean we spend money someplace that one person doesn't agree with, but it's a necessity that this goes here, that doesn't go in another place. I've heard complaints, I heard a complaint that the library had money taken away from them, but we had nothing taken away from them, and I heard something. Oh, there's only so much money to go around. I've tried to work very hard with the library to absorb some expenses that they have. They have their own separate budget that's created by ordinance. The library board votes on it, and it's incorporated into the town budget. But I've also tried to incorporate some of their expenditures. And not just the library. We work with the Board of Education on a regular basis. We try to cooperate and do things together so that, if my highway crew can go out and dig a hole with tobacco and save the Board of Education money for, a project or something, we make sure we do it, we communicate, we collaborate, and I think that in the last few years, we've collaborated much better together. That is savings that you don't see in the budget.
All right, yes, this lady here.
Hi, Janet Alden. I guess I have a question. I always hear, comments, you can't change things as a union. I worked at the hospital. We lost our retirement. People haven't had raises in 6 years. You had to work harder. You had more patient load. I've been retired for 2 years, but the same thing is still happening. And I just don't understand. And we had a union, AFT, I think that's the teachers' union. I don't understand why you can't renegotiate and why are they still getting raises when nobody else is getting raises? You can change contracts. They changed our contracts. They took away retirement on people. I told I was going to get so much. I didn't get that much. People who were already retired, they took money away from them. It stinks. I know how they feel. It's not a good thing that it happened. But this is the times that we're living in. And we have to somehow change our budgets like we've all had. When you're young to when you're retired to, and it's just, I hear this all the time. You can negotiate different contracts with the union. Don't tell me you can't, because it was done to me. It can be done, and I just don't understand, because you can cut a lot of money with that. And people stayed at the hospital. Nobody left. We were happy there. It was convenient. We were close to home. So, people will stay. You stayed at your job. I don't know who was here, but, yes, you're staying there, and it's working, and I don't understand why that's not done within towns. No, I'm sure we're not the only town.
Well, I don't want to repeat what the hospital did. They used the bankruptcy court to basically get rid of your contract.
Again, that was poor management.
Right, and we're not going to do that.
No, but our
You don't want
selectmen
us to
said
do
a lot
that.
of our problems are because of previous administration, which that's the same with everybody.
No,
People were spending when they had it, and now we don't have it.
Right.
And,
The
it's
contracts-
just the way it is.
Contracts are negotiated every 3 years. They go through collective bargaining. I know I participated in the teacher education contract several times. We got the teachers to agree to a 0% increase for 1 year, and that's what you do, you pressure them.
Had raises in 6 years.
I understand. Thank you.
6, going on 7.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yes, Steve?
With the municipal contracts, like I said, the labor unions, we negotiate them every 2 years. And there's, we renegotiate the municipal labor contracts every 3 years. There was some that were 5 years at one time. They've all been brought down to 3 years, and just trying to bring them down together so that we're negotiating kind of in sequence together. It's very difficult to negotiate with 5 labor unions when you're negotiating every single year, and then one union tries to use something against you that was done for another union.
What is a 5 labor union?
We have a labor union for the highway department. We have a labor union for our 2 full-time constables. We have a labor union for the town hall employees, 2 full-time constables, the highway department, supervisors, there's 4, and have 6 because the employees at the Water Pollution Control Authority unionized this last year. But when we look at the negotiations, and what I want to do is I want to bring up that there's other things that are in some of those contracts where if you see a 2% raise, there may be other increases, let's say in healthcare insurance. Last year, the town hall employees got a 2% raise. We also raised their contribution for healthcare. They took home in their paycheck less money. You know, but what I'm saying is that healthcare expense, the healthcare expense would be there, and we would pay for that expense one way or the other. Whether it reflects in their salary and we take it back, or they get no raise and no increase. You know, there is things that happen like that.
I'm sure at the hospital you have to pay more for insurance, and you still didn't get a raise.
Well, you know, let me give you kind of a synopsis on municipal labor unions. It was an eye-opener. You know, I've been self-employed my entire life, never part of a union. We see on TV all the time something happening at the state or the federal government, and we all say to ourselves, why isn't that person escorted out and fired today? They're on administrative leave with pay. Well, let me tell you, it's because it's the law. Municipal, state, federal employees are protected by the 14th Amendment. You catch them doing something wrong, and I'm not saying anything about all of our employees, any of our employees, but what I'm saying is private non-union jobs, union non-municipal or non-government jobs, and municipal jobs, it's a totally different playing field. I got a wide, an eye-opening experience on it. But, you know, you catch somebody doing something wrong, and you have to physically hold a hearing, and you have to, you can't just fire that employee. I mean, let's say they run a car into a tree, or they steal something and you catch them red-handed, you can't just fire them. And that's because of the labor laws. You know, not just contracts do we have to deal with, but we also got to deal with labor laws. And it's quite complex.
Excuse me, if I could speak just for a moment about the Board of Ed side. The Board of Education actually has 3 bargaining units. We have the administrators bargaining unit, we have teachers or certified staff, that's school psychologists and social worker are also grouped. And then we have a 3rd bargaining unit called the CSEA, and that bargaining unit consists of custodians, maintenance, secretaries, paraprofessionals, and kitchen workers. What I would like you all to know, and I see a lot of new faces, so this is a great opportunity to share this information, is that each of those bargaining units did, within their last contract series, agree to what we call a hard freeze, which means you don't get to move up a step for your years of experience, as well as a salary increase. I would also say there is a 4th group called non-affiliated, which is just that. They are not affiliated with a bargaining unit. Those folks also, last year, took a 0% increase in wages. And Rich already spoke to the point that because our insurance, the cost of insurance is going up quite significantly, we're all struggling with that. And I appreciate that. But last year we had a 23.5% increase in our insurance. So as Rich mentioned, the group we met with last night in terms of negotiations actually took home less money last year because of those increases in insurance than they did the year before. So we do recognize that. Bargaining units, as we go into negotiations, realize that it's difficult economic times. So we try to actually bargain on other kinds of working conditions that maybe don't impact the community as much as the salary. But so I did want you to understand that. Right. There's also a stage if you don't come to agreement, you can go to mediation and ultimately arbitration. What happens then is that each team, the board negotiating committee, as well as the bargaining unit, would each be paying attorney fees, plus you would be paying for an arbitrator. You each present your best proposal, and it's all hands down. Whichever proposal the arbitrator decides to go with, both groups have to live with. So in addition to that, you do require a lot of legal fees too. So you really try to settle a lot of that, come to agreement, lots of compromising, and that's, you know, the term negotiations. So I do want people to realize that all of the, I can speak for the Board of Ed employees, all of the Board of Ed employees have been cooperative and have worked and settled, agreed to 0% increases in salaries over the last 3-4 years, wherever their last cycle is. Every 3 years we renegotiate. Thank you.
Mr. Squire? My name's Steve Squire, and I want to say that I want to speak to the education budget. My kids are out of school, so I have no skin in this game. But I think it's you know, I watched the schools get better and better as my kids grew up. And I just feel that the quality of education is in danger here. I think it's a damn shame that our superintendent's working out of a trailer now. And I just think that in some ways our priorities are getting skewed, and I worry for our education of our kids. They might end up growing up like us and arguing like us if we don't watch out. Lady back, Laura.
Rich, do you have something to say?
Oh, I can.
All right, I have a cold, so I'm sorry. I'm trying not to breathe on everybody. First of all, I'd like to let you all know that I'm non-affiliated and I didn't get a raise, so you're welcome. Last year, I do work in the schools. I have 2 kids in town, and I keep hearing about what we don't get for our money in this town. And I just want to share what I feel that we do get. We get an excellent education for the kids in this town, and lots of support for children who have issues in this town. I mean, if you have a kid that has problems in this town, you are in the best town around to get the support for your children that you need. I see it every day with the people I work with, and I hear about it from families whose kids do have issues, and this is where you want to be. I hear from people who want to move to Stafford because of our education. So I agree with Mr. Squire that I'm worried about what's going to happen with our education. I have a cold, I lost my train of thought. What we get for our money. I will tell you, I live in the borough. The police presence in the borough lately has been phenomenal. I'm standing on my corner the other night, and some idiot in a minivan goes 50 by me on Prospect Street. And right behind him is a police officer. Pulled him right over, and it's a house that we're suspicious of, I'll tell you, and he was there for a good long time looking into what was going on. I've seen him walking around on foot in my neighborhood, which is also excellent. I mean, it's Prospect Street. So, you know, I see that I'm getting that from my money. They are working to keep me and my children safe in my neighborhood and other parts of town. People complain because they get pulled over. You know what? I got pulled over. Okay, my car wasn't registered. I didn't realize it was a mess. You know, I bought it, I won, whatever. But I was wrong, okay? And I admit it. And I understand people get frustrated with that. The arts community in this town is huge, and it is pulling people in. I talked to people at Basil's just the other night who came to town for something at the Palace, and we're at dinner at Basil's, and they're like, what a great town. I mean, that stuff is bringing people in, and now we have to get people to want to stay, and that's all the stuff that Rich just put up there, the expansion of the utilities, the rail service. People will be able to get on a train and come see somebody at the Palace that they want to see. I mean, that's big stuff, and it's exciting stuff. And, you know, I haven't been here as long as a lot of people. I've only been here 10 years this year, next month. But you know what? I'm not planning on leaving, and I love it here. I don't make a lot of money. I work 2 jobs. I own a business in town in order to pay my bills and pay my taxes. And I'm happy to do it because this is a great place to live, and it's got a lot to offer. And I just think it's going to go forward. We elected all of these people up here, and all these people here, and other people. We've elected these people to take our money and do something good with it. If you don't like what they're doing, then elect somebody else. But I've been at a lot of these meetings since January as far as the budget goes. And I mean, I still don't understand all of it. It's a lot of information. I totally agree. And I have heard some complaints from people that want budget for dummies. And I do think that's something you should look into, where it's simplified, because it is hard to understand. I mean, I still don't get it. I've been doing one of these for 4 or 5 years now. So if that's something that you guys can do in the future, but right now, all we're doing by voting this budget down every time is shooting ourselves in the foot. And it's not helping, it's not changing what people are angry about. That will change when you vote in new people or you run yourself to go help run the town. I mean, that's what needs to happen. I hope that the Board of Finance will send this budget back to referendum as it is. I'd like to put more money there. If you could give me a raise, that would be great. But you don't have to. Send it back as it is. It's a good budget. People worked hard on it all year long, and I've been to most of those meetings. This was not just thrown together. There's a lot of thought put into it, and these people were voted in to do that job for us. If you want to have a say, it should have been back in January or February as far as what was cut, what was kept, and that doesn't generally happen. At this point, let's pass the budget and move on.
Real quick, just a short labor story to enlighten people on what we deal with on a daily basis. A couple years ago, an employee was caught in town with possession of narcotics and an intent to sell. What did I do? I fired him. You're out of here. I can't have an employee of the town of Stafford selling and dealing drugs in the community. Guess what? I had to pay his unemployment. Because
How long, Rich? How long?
how long? Are we still paying that?
Yes.
Yes. So we're looking at almost 2 years. But on the other hand, if I had done nothing, then I would have been criticized about you let a drug dealer work for the town. Sometimes we have to make those decisions, and we made that decision because it's not right. But unfortunately, the state and the arbitrator gets involved, and then I have to pay unemployment. And it was clearly because his job description didn't state and spell out, you cannot deal drugs in the town of Stafford. So sometimes what seems cut and dry isn't always so simple.
We paid that. Who said that I paid that? We paid that.
Yes, everybody here paid that. We're self-funded.
Is it in the application now, no dealing drugs?
It's very specific. Those things, and even when we're negotiating labor contracts, and labor law is no different than what I was used to dealing with 3 years in the zoning. A judge makes a ruling that totally changes the interpretation of a law, and then we got to change half of a contract because of a judge's ruling and that changed a law. So there's a lot that we do.
I just want to say that when Governor Rowland was in power, he managed to eliminate positions, change positions, get around the union in a way, and he compromised our jobs, so we were working double, and the union couldn't do anything about it. And there's ways to get around it. Julian did it. He changed positions.
We've talked about this, and the one thing that I want to stress to everybody, because I am not a person that will sit here and say, I blame, this or I blame that. I will not put blame, but we have to look at our past and we have to look at our history and see where we came. And it's not blaming anybody, but I'm going to talk about previous selectmen. Previous selectmen did what they needed to do to keep taxes down. And that, over the years, was not replacing employees. And what I'm saying is, we are at a staffing level that right now it's detrimental. It's detrimental to the residents. The residents, they tend to look and maybe hear some bad stories where there's been some bad experiences, but that's not everybody. People have felt about the work. The town administrator position was not replaced. All of those duties were handed off to other people. Are they being done? Yes. Are they being done as efficiently? Probably not. I met with the liaison from the Office of Policy Management a couple weeks ago. One of my suggestions to her, because something that I find is different requirements that we're required to do different filings or reports with the state of Connecticut. You know, employees leave, things change, duties change, people forget about stuff. It's not intentional, but it seems like every once in a while, all of a sudden, you get a letter from somebody at the state saying, hey, you haven't filed this report. And then you look into it and you find out that that report hadn't been filed in 10 years because the person that used to do it was no longer there. You know, continuity is one thing that we're striving for, is cross-training people and continuity. But people are doubling up their duties. And like I said, getting rid of employees will hurt everyone in the town. In one form or another, it will affect the town. People talk about what do I get for my taxes. If people don't take advantage of what is openly offered to them, the transfer station. You know, we saved $1 million by being open the hours that we're open now. Our budget could be $1 million higher if my predecessors hadn't made those decisions. A lot of towns, transfer stations open 2 days a week. You know, Sundays, we looked into it. I came back, I talked about it. We're talking $80,000 to $100,000 to open it for one day. Would I like it to be open, personally? I think Saturdays and Sundays. That's what I would like to see. What we want and what we can always do, we can't always do. I would like it open on Sundays, and I told everybody. But I researched it and come back, and we're looking at $80,000 to $100,000 to change the schedule and open it that one day. You know, I can renegotiate with the employees, I can change, you know, their schedules around, but there's still going to be a cost associated with it.
Hi, my name is Tim Bailey. I've been here in town for about 25 years or so. I try to stay in my own little corner. I pay my taxes, and but I don't want to see anybody in town lose their job. I want to see everybody in this room get a raise. And you know, unfortunately, the world we live in is tough for everyone. And what I think it kind of goes back echo a little bit what Dave says. It's just really not so much about whether we get raises or how much money we spend here. I think it's more about transparency and that we're getting accountability. I think that's the biggest problem we have with government in general, and it starts at the local level. To see it from the, you know, it doesn't start up the top and come down. It starts right here. We need honesty, integrity in office, and I think we have that. But I think that's what we need to look at more than, you know, who gets what, how we, there's a lot of the mechanics that we don't understand because we all have our jobs and we're going about our way. And we have to, when we entrust we put our faith in the people that we elect, or maybe that we don't elect, but we have to, I think that's what we look for. And the transparency, I think, goes a long way towards that information. I think the newsletters are a great idea. I know it seems to cost money, but if it helps us make better decisions as a community, I like this community. I've stayed here. I intend to stay here for a long time. My wife has worked in several towns. She's a town clerk in one of the local towns here now. She's worked in 3 different towns as town clerk. And there's inefficiencies in every town. But I think there needs to be accountability. And we've all worked with those workers that just kind of plod along and do what they have to do. And believe me, I've worked with them, and I want to fire them. I want to get rid of them. I don't need to be. They don't help. They drag everybody else down. And I think as the towns and employees, and as the people's employees, we want that same accountability. We want to know that there's efficiency, that we're looking at better ways to do things. And I know it's difficult because when you have to deal with unions, and I had to deal with that before too. And I've been in jobs where I've been in the union and where I've not been in the union, but I've been on both sides of it. And it's difficult because there are laws that you have to follow. You have to put up with certain things. Well, why can't I just get rid of this guy? And there's lots of things, good and bad on both sides. But I think as much as possible, I think we all want to just see accountability and know that our dollars are being spent well and that the people that we do pay, employ, that they're doing their jobs efficiently and to the best of their ability, and that there's some accountability. So I really, I get all the raises, I just hope they're earning. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to say, I mean, I love this town too. I lived here 14 years. I don't lock my doors. There's things I love about this town. I have a grandchild now that's in the school system, and I think it's great. I moved from Madison. They told me I was crazy 14 years ago. You're a better school system than Madison ever was, and they think they walk on water. However, we need to be open to companies coming in. We need to be welcoming. You get the right companies to come into this town, they will pay to do the improvements that the town is saying we have to pay to do. I mean, that is the reality. If they want to come into this town and the town is welcoming, they will redo the roads, they will extend the sewer systems, they will do whatever it is they need to do to come into this town. And I said, I don't like Walmart, I don't like any big box. Walmart did not make things the way it is. Our government has allowed all these jobs to go overseas, and we want things cheaper, and Walmart's just figured out how to do it. If you bring a Walmart into town, or any business like it, the town will not suffer. 2% will lose businesses. The remaining towns around will lose 30%. And you will draw in more people, businesses will thrive, because people will come here. And we're not going to get derelicts. I mean, nobody's going to come from Manchester to go to Walmart here, but you are going to get people from Munson and Palmer, and you're going to get surrounding towns to come in here and help make this business thrive. And I'm not saying it's Walmart, but if you get the right companies, they will extend those sewer systems, they will take care of the roads, they will fix what it is to do to bring their businesses in, and we will thrive.
I couldn't agree anymore. I started to talk about all these before, and the zoning officer, I asked him to put together all the package and the demographics. I got off on a tangent about us being a hub again, a regional destination. But what I'm doing is putting together that package, and I'm sending it to the corporate headquarters to show that, you know, they look at it as, here's your population, you don't reach that threshold, we're moving on. If I can show them the shopping opportunities that people have in Ellington, Holland, Stafford, Wilmington, Ashford, Holland, if I can show them where they can draw from, you know, the girl I talked to, her attitude, and she told me, well, people that like our stores, in Stafford, they'll go to Vernon and Renfield. Well, why don't we want to get these people from these neighboring towns of ours to come to our town, to shop at a store in our town, to buy gas, to eat in our restaurants? And that's one of the things.
It's not Aldi though, you need a bigger.
No, but it's one thing.
To see an Aldi.
It's one thing that we're working on. The utility expansion project. You know, that is a public-private partnership, and it's a partnership with the town of Stafford, Yankee Gas, the state of Connecticut, and the larger consumers of the oil and propane, with 3M, TTM, and American Woman. And we figured out a plan as how to make that project work and financially viable. But the town has to lead the charge on it. When the governor passed the legislation encouraging expansion of natural gas, my goal when I took office was water and sewer in the 190 corridor. Dennis and I looked at it and said, there's no way, we can't afford it. That legislation changed the ballgame. Dennis came to me and said, I got a plan, and I said, you're crazy. Yeah. I said, there's no way. And you know what? I was concerned that what I wanted to do with the water and sewer to try to get that into the 190 corridor, I was concerned about what he wanted to do, saying, I want to get gas from Enfield here and I can make it happen. I was concerned that my little project that I wanted to get done would be lost and wouldn't get done. Now, here we are 2 years later. We've had multiple meetings with Yankee Gas. We've had multiple meetings with the state. Our last meeting, we met with business representatives from the labor unions. This has got a lot of steam behind it. And it's going to be financed through the savings of the consumers. And like I said before, $3 million in 1 year, if we take a portion of their savings, it's going to pay for the project. So the town is going to get this benefit. And the businesses aren't paying for it to come to town. There's a lot of moving parts, and we're hoping October sometime? October, we're hoping to be able to make a formal press release between the town, the state of Connecticut, and Yankee Gas as to how it's actually coming together. We've talked about it. We've talked about it in several meetings. It's been in several newspaper articles. The solar project that we're talking about at the high school and transfer station. There was a big article about that in the reminder. We keep talking about transparency, and I've been over there before, and I said the same thing. And getting over here, I'm doing the best that I can to get information out to people. But the one thing I want to stress is because somebody didn't hear about something, doesn't mean that we're trying to hide it from somebody. And the transparency, like I said, I've been there, and I've said, well, that was done behind closed doors. Then I find out that, well, here's a whole litany of meetings that was discussed at. I want people to understand that we are not trying to hide anything. All meetings are open. We run very open meetings with people able to talk to the public, and I just want people to understand that sometimes because somebody didn't hear about something, a project, or hear about something, doesn't mean that we were trying to do it behind closed doors.
Mr. Kelly.
I'm sitting in your chair tonight, I'm wondering what I'm going to do with what I've heard tonight. And I'm not sure. What I'd like to suggest is the following. I couldn't agree more that the way we proceed is to take the budget as it currently stands and send it back. And the reason for that is you're already 1 quarter deep into the fiscal year. We've got 9 months left, and to continue to go through this thing time after time after time. Mr. Richards made several fine points tonight, many of which, frankly, I agree with. But one of them is it's not going to change whether or not you're going to buy trucks or not. The trucks are already purchased. People are concerned about new vehicles and things of that nature. Those expenditures have already been made. Several points, I think, is all the boards go forward over the course of the year in terms of being cognizant of how people are feeling and being as frugal as you possibly can going forward. A couple of quick suggestions on the material provided by the Board of Education, I think was well done. It is a pretty good description of the cuts that have been made, and we haven't seen something comparable for the town, something that would say not only where the cuts have been made, but where the investments are being made, and basically where you were and how your key performance or how you're performing on key performance indicators. I think would also be reassuring to people in terms of how the money is being spent. Lastly, I think the messaging around, look, here's kind of the bridge to the future. The future does have these 4 elements to it in terms of how we build a brand list going forward. That messaging needs to be built in what you do. So from my vantage point, send it back, emphasize kind of where the cuts have been made, what investments are being made for the purposes of moving you forward on the roadmap that you set out, and be pretty thoughtful about any new expenditures that you make until we get a little further down the road.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see any more hands up. Yes, Mr. Walsh.
I think this was a very good discussion tonight. I want to thank everybody for taking part. I just had one parting comment, and again, I think it's it's offered as a way of helping us to move forward. The comments that I made about what I consider to be a lack of transparency in this town would go back at least 10 years, okay? And they would include Democrats and Republican administrations, not just the Republicans. I wasn't targeting just your administration. I disagree with you entirely to believe that, and I think it's been expressed by a lot of people tonight, that there's an adequate level of transparency now, or that there was even 4 years ago. If you hold a selectmen's meeting, you have 12,000 citizens and 2 people regularly show up, 3, 4, something's wrong, all right? And the same thing is true if you're trying to get information from, you have to FOI things all the time, or one of the selectmen, not you, but one of the selectmen told me in the past, email me, I'll email you an answer, or come down to the office. This is the one thing I would suggest. If the notes announcing the meetings of all the boards, including the Board of Selectmen, were a little bit more inclusive, saying, for example, not just appointments should be made tonight, but appointments of to what? Of whom? Listen, so if those who are interested will say, even though I've got to, I had to work extra hours, I've got to give the kids a bath and all that, it's worth me going down there because I'm interested in who's going to be the next recreation chairman, or something like that. If that was added to it, and newsletter, I don't care how much it costs, I think it's an excellent idea. People have to be informed here. That's part of gaining the trust back into the town government and getting people to vote like we used to. Yes, on the first or second time around. But I think that no one should leave this room believing that this is adequate openness for a small town. If this was the United States government, you couldn't give answers out of Washington, all right. You could say the size of the bureaucracy is huge and the distance is huge. But this is Stafford. And I can remember times when older selectmen would go 4 and 5 times all around town and hold meetings in different places to discuss issues. And I'd like to see more, at least more written communication, if we can't do it any other way. But please, work on that, and I think everybody is behind the government here. They want the town to move forward. Tonight was a big step in the right direction, and I thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
Anyone else? Yes, Neil.
I'm Neil Haas, I'm one of the selectmen. I'm a business owner in another town, but I love this town, and Rich and DJ have been working on this for a while with us. The Board of Finance is sitting here quiet all night with a little bit of work ahead of you. I think this is the best thing we've done in a long time. I know we have people saying we sent something on Facebook. I don't really have time or the desire to think government should be run by that. Blake is videoing this stuff for us and trying to get the word out that are at our meetings. Mr. Richards is at a lot of our meetings. I appreciate his feedback. But there's usually 3 or 4 people there trying to tell me, Deidre and Rich, how you want to run the town. So this is very good to hear, at least to me, why we went from 400 vote loss to 450. I had no clue what we should be doing. We went and cut $237,000 out of the budget. Was that right or wrong? We came back here, we took money out of the general fund. I believe it's right where it needs to be. I think the communication that's starting tonight with Rich's presentation, with Pat, Dr. Collins, excuse me, her presentation, the education is right where we want to be. This young lady here who has a son that's a master's, I hope he can come to our town and start a business or has a business to come to soon. And I think we're going in that direction. I just think we shouldn't cut anything else. Present it as is and get the vote out, and we'll be where we want to be with the communication. With Pete running the Energy Commission and Dennis putting the stuff together. This town is going in the right direction from everything I know. I just think we lack a little bit of communication to tell you guys without paperwork. If we put that in the paper as you're saying, I think we're going to be where we want to be when you decide to vote for us again or not vote for us in a year from November. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to say one thing. Gentlemen, what he just said is very, very true, and people are excited about taking one step forward. But it's the 4 steps backward that we have won that brought this meeting tonight. So I don't think anybody should forget that. And that was always voting no and winning by a small margin. There is reasons that we do that, and every one of us have our own. And I'm sure that there's some people here that have voted for the increase in the budget. But it did take 4 of these negatives to bring on this positive. And we can't forget that. We just can't go out of here and say, oh, that was a great meeting. This is always going to be be like this, but it's not, unless we go with the attitude of how we got here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I want to thank everyone for their participation this evening. The input is going to be very helpful to us. The Board of Finance will continue to meet after this to discuss what further action we will take on the budget. So you are all welcome to stay and observe that if you want to.
Right.
We can bring both things to their attention. You want to go to town meeting, you want to go to
I think the majority of people are in solid.
See,
I think they have to realize that they need to support a budget that actually lowers their taxes. And I'm supposed to say something about this last time. I think that's the main tax we want to do. Does it happen? So that it, does it?
They've been on for like 50 years.
I remember back in the 70s. I think the message gets out to people that are taxes, and that this budget was the one that everybody worked really hard on. To reduce your taxes, even if you have less money, even though it's not going up, we reduced your taxes, going down, and that hasn't happened in 15 years. In other words, this is something really good that's happened. And I don't think we do it. You know, you didn't hear anything else about people. I am bad about this thing we came up with. All the things we heard about, like the vehicles, things we really can't do about. But I mean, the police seem to be, everything else, and they say we can spend like that. And the thing that they help us, you know, you try to exalt, you have your employees. He's replaced people, but I think they're very close. I think it's a good part. I think that's to get the message out to people that it's the first time it happened after 15 years. It's a good part. Yeah, I do too. Let's go back to that one.
We have a responsibility in our town also, and I know that my knowledge that I have, up and down, maybe not, absolutely the wrong direction. It is. It is. You're sending a message to the public. Listen to the people. You're listening to a very small You're listening to a very small number, and they're coming up. Just like that woman said over the night. Regardless, you're going to get a message that we're staying home.
I'll tell you right now what I think. We have, they probably,
That's not the reason why people vote for the budget. You don't want to tell people to vote for the budget because they're in school.
I need at least
We're actually changing it up. We have to let people know what believe the budget actually is.
Yes, he does.
And like I said, the majority of people really think the budget is good. They really vote.
no, I think there was nothing wrong, Steve. I think it's that two acts, people are two acts that can be but the people that don't want the budget, fair enough to affect other people to come and vote for it.
That's the point of making the investment.
But the people that want the budget, that like the budget, are not gonna run out. But you're not gonna get them out in a referendum, you're not gonna get them out in a town meeting. What do you think get them out? Joe, try to tell a non-voter. Just tell them to vote, whatever way they want to vote.
I can tell. I can't
It'd be nice
Now, the schools can't even put out something, the schools can't that a vote was taking place to approve conversion.
Since July 2nd. We can send out warning, we can't send out a mass notification, we can't. We send it out 2 days before, we send it out the night before, and then during the day. We send it out to hard copies that I.
Perhaps the PCO would put that notice in each school, PTO. They did.
And the town also submitted a request to us that we can use the electronic sign. We can do that because we use board and funds to pay electronic signs, but the town originally request, one request for Rich that we posted, so that was a strategy.
Okay, well, we've got to come up with a minute, I guess, Brandon's idea is right, call. Everybody pick 12 people and call them. And ask the 12 people to call 12 more people.
We should go back to two committees. I'm not talking about because this is called Democrat committees.
Doing that with ours, I don't know about yours, but
I've
with
asked,
ours.
I've asked both committees, I've asked my board members to please go back to each of the committees and ask if they would drum up support for voters to keep it. And I think it's an
Well, I agree with you. And I think that this is sometimes because I don't see one.
You know, I'm actually seeing Mark kind of come down a little bit off that pedestal, which is kind of good to me.
Yeah, we'll together, cost the average taxpayer, $30.
Do a vote for it. Oh, I think, no, I think that would make them angry. That would make them angry. Oh, you're bad. You're bad. I'm second.
They're self-sufficient. They went to the chief show 2 years ago. Chief went, that's pretty nice. Up there next to the check. He was $60,000 thank you for driving home. You would have done it. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like you pretty good.
Laurie, is it possible to give us a list of call voters? I'm here to get my number, just our friends. Just our friends. Just our friends, just one.
The town clerk. Right, they can vote.
They were so sick of children in the trailer, so to speak. But I mean, that's basically, we need to change the law, isn't it? I mean,
I don't know if I hear it.
And we should invite him over for a meeting because it's been put together very nicely.
Well, we all spent like $1 million.
It's
took the wheels off.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.